right, here we go. So we are on Kuf Vav Amud Beis. We are learning Leila Nishmas Mindel Mariam Bas Kalman Ruben Her Neshama Shem Aliyah. We are on the bottom. We are towards the bottom. We are the last narrow line on Kuf Vav Amud Beis, and the article is 106b3. Tzvi Shnechnas Labayas. All right, see that? Tzvi Shnechnas Labayas all the way at the bottom of 106b3. So a deer enters a house by itself. Okay, so your door is open one day, and all of a sudden a deer runs into your house. It'd be pretty scary, right? If a deer's in your house, what do you guys think? Yeah. I'm asking kids, Max.
They've never come in.
Okay, so that'd be pretty funny, right? So the deer comes in your house, v'nal echad b'fanav, and one person closed the door in front of the deer. Chayiv, you're going to be chayiv. You're not allowed to, because that's ultimately trapping the deer. The deer would be considered trapped at that point. Now lushnayim, if two people close it, piturim, you're going to be exempt, right? Because why? Because it doesn't take two people to close a door, and we already had this discussion earlier. When two people do a malacha that's only a malacha that one person could do, then you are going to be exempt. However, lo yachal echad linol v'nal lushnayim chayav, unless you have a big heavy door, and the only way to close this door is with two people. And two people close it, then they're both going to be liable. Rav Shimon, Poter Rav Shimon, if you remember, it was based on a psukim. Rav Shimon says two people doing malacha together are never going to be chayiv, even if it's necessary for two people to close the door. He holds you're going to be pater. Okay, let's turn the page. Gemara, Amrav Yirmiyah bar Abba Amr Shmuel Hatzad Ari b'Shabbos. Person traps a lion on Shabbos. Eno chayiv, you're not going to be chayiv. Ad shiach nisenu legorziki shalom, until a person brings it into its cage. In other words, if you put a lion, you wrap a lion with like ropes or whatever it is, it's not considered trapped. Bottom line is, it gets mad, it decides it's going to run, and it's not just limited to a lion. Any ferocious animal, any animal that is not really trapped, and the truth is going to be for any animal that is not in a trap that's going to work no matter what. In other words, what we're learning over here is trapping is specifically when it's really, really fully trapped. But if an animal is trapped right now, but if it decides, if it gets angry, if it gets riled up, it's going to run out of it, then it's not considered trapped. And a lion is just an example of an animal where tying it up is not necessarily going to be enough, because we're talking about something where it could break free from those ties. Okay, let's go a little further, and then we'll do our summary, and then we'll try to do some of the practical halachos.
We're focused so much more on the action as opposed to the outcome here, because according to the Mishnah, if two people do it, so what? The result is the same. The
result is that it's going to be trapped.
Right,
but it's malacha, meaning by the same way when two people carry this chair, when two people are not needed to do, so it's not about the outcome, it's about the liability of the action, which is that two people are needed for this chair, and therefore going to be pater.
Right, it's just interesting that it's not about what you're doing, it's about who's doing it.
Correct, and the process of doing it. Right. Exactly. Okay, new Mishnah. Yashav echad al Pesach. One person sits in the doorway, velo milahu, and does not fully block the doorway. Right. So we're talking about a case where a deer is already in the house, and now you want to trap it in the house. So one person stands in the doorway. Okay, velo milahu, and they do not fully block it. Okay, yashav hasheni umilahu, and then a second person sits down next to the first person, and now causes the door to be blocked. Okay, keep in mind, you think like this sounds a little crazy. If a deer runs to your house, like the last thing you would want to do is keep it stuck in your house, right? You want it out of the house. The truth is, if you like deer, and I know someone locally, I can't, because I think it's illegal what they did, but so I don't want to say who it is, but someone who really is wanting to have deer. Deer's expensive, and whatever. For years, he was telling everyone around him, like, if you ever catch a deer, and bottom line is they caught a deer. I think the shecht in their backyard here, right in the area. He's a shochet, and whatever, he had deer, he had a barbecue with deer. So who wouldn't want? Meaning, deer is a delicacy to have some deer. And therefore, you can imagine that if a person has a deer runs into their house, granted the kids might, lose their mind, but the bottom line is, you can have deer for dinner, so people would want to trap it, right? This is not as crazy of a case as it sounds. So again, one person, you have a doorway, and it's a wide doorway, so one person sits in the doorway. It's not enough to block the deer from leaving. So a second guy comes along, puts his chair down, and now they're blocking the doorway together. The second guy is causing the doorway to be blocked up. Hasheni chayiv, the second one is going to be liable. Yashav rishon al Pesach milo. The first person sits in the doorway and blocks it completely. Uva sheni v'yashav etzido, and then the second person comes and sits down next to him. Okay, so now again, here the first guy sits down. It's a wide doorway. Second, it doesn't block it. Second guy comes, sits down. Now it's fully blocked. The second guy is going to be chayiv. Now we're dealing with the case. Let's say you have a doorway. Person sits down. He's blocking the doorway, and then a person sits down next to him and is just. He's not blocking the door. He's also blocking the doorway, but it's really the first person blocked it entirely on his own. And then, now the first person gets up, and the second person is left blocking the doorway. Okay, but the first person already initially blocked the doorway. Right, you with me on the case? In other words, this is my doorway. This is my doorway, and I have guy number one sitting over here, and then person number two comes and sits over here. Person number one leaves, and now Person number two is left blocking the doorway, but it was a doorway that was already blocked because the first person was already blocking the doorway. Says the Gemara. Harishon Chayav Hasheni Patzer. The first person is liable, the second person exempt. Why? What's it comparable to? Lenoel is based l'shomro, to a person who locks his house to block it. V'nimtza tzvi shamar b'socho, and there's a deer that's already guarded inside. So, meaning, if you have a case where there's an animal that's already trapped, and then you go and you lock your door, but the animal's already trapped. In other words, if there's an animal that's tied up in your house and you lock the front door, did you do anything? No. As we said, you can't trap an already trapped animal. And therefore here too, if the first person was already sitting there, and then the second person came along and sat there afterwards, it's like the deer is already trapped. The second guy is doing nothing. And therefore the second guy is patur, even though once the first guy leaves, the second guy is by default or passively, left blocking the door. Okay, let's turn the page. Kav Zayin Amud Aleph. Here we go. Amar Rabba Amar Rav Chia Bar Ashi Amar Rav Nichnasa Lo Tzipor Tachas Knafav. Let's say a bird enters under the flaps of a person's garments and cannot get out. Okay, imagine that you're sitting around. Yeah. I love your face. Oh, it's a called. So you're like, whoa, that'd be a little scary, right? Or whatever. Keep in mind, they had like these bathrobes that they wore. They had these big robes, and a bird enters, and now it's stuck, right? Did you trap? You did not trap, right? So the says Gemara, you're allowed to sit there and guard it until it gets dark. In other words, you don't have to get it out. You didn't do anything. And again, keep in mind, you and I are going to be running for our lives. They want to trap the birds, trap the deer. Fine, so you're allowed to sit there and hold on to it. You didn't actually trap the animal. That's the point that the Rav Abba is saying. Ask the Gemara, however, Master of Nachman Yitzchak, Yashav Rishon on Pesach Umilahu, V'yashav Hasheni V'yashav Etzido. First guy comes and fills the doorway. The second guy comes and sits next to him. Okay, and so this is the line we just saw in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, right? So the first guy gets up now, the second guy is going to be exempt. Ask the Gemara, but the word in the Mishnah is pater. What does pater mean? Pater always means pater aval aser. Pater means you're exempt, but really it's forbidden. Ma'ila pater aval aser. So doesn't this mean that although the second guy is not going to have to bring a carbon, but it's still prohibited to do so, right? Because even though he didn't do the trapping, he is enabling the trapping to continue. Let's go back to the Mishnah's case. Guy number one comes and blocks the door. Guy number two comes along. Guy number one leaves. So we're saying guy number two it's pater, but the assumption is pater al asr, meaning it's still forbidden. So why would it be forbidden? Because he's still causing the animal to be trapped, even though he didn't do an act of trapping. So wouldn't that be akin to our case, where if the bird comes into my suit jacket and I don't move, it should be asr, even though it's not something I would bring a carbon. It's the same thing where I'm enabling the animal, or I'm facilitating the animal being trapped, even though I'm not actually trapping it, right? It should be identical. So Gemara says, no, pater mutter. You are not only exempt, but it's also permitted. Okay, so now this is new, because until now, every time we've said pater in Masechah Shabbos, we've said it means pater aval aser. So we'll have to explain this. So he says, hachinami mistabra. First, we're going to just prove it intrinsically. This also makes sense. It's reasonable. Miniktani safe, because the end of the Mishnah said, lemazda dome. What is this comparable to? What is this analogous to? Lenoel is based l'shomer. A person locks their house to guard it. V'nimtza tzvi shamar b'socha, and there's a deer that is already locked in. Miklal de pater umutter. Shema mina. So the assumption is that again the last line in the Mishnah, which was explaining why it is pater for the second guy. Well, the second guy is pater. He says no different than closing your door when there's an animal that's trapped inside. And the Gemara assumes over here that happens all the time. A person has like a dog trapped inside their house. They have a bird trapped inside their house. You're allowed to lock your door, meaning that's pasha. That's obvious. And so therefore, when the Mishnah said pater, it must mean pater umutter, that you're it's completely allowed. Not only are you exempt from a carbon, it's completely allowed, and therefore we no longer have a question on Rav Abba, and you are allowed to sit there with the bird stuck in your clothing, because we see these types of cases where you're just enabling the animal to be stuck. You're not trapping it, but you're also not freeing it. It's not only pater in the sense you don't bring a carbon, but it's actually going to be mutter. Okay, so again, any animal that's stuck in your house already, you are now allowed to leave it trapped. You don't have to go and set it free. Yeah.
So what if it was actually intentional? What if the first guy said, hey, I need you to leave me for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Come sit next to me. We'll both be blocking it. You go, it's mutter.
L'chora it's mutter, meaning it's the same way, meaning again, halamazadoma, what does the Mishnah conclude by saying? It's no different than closing your door when you have an animal stuck in a cage in the house. So it's the same thing. There I could do it deliberately, but I'm closing my door, and presumably it's mutter. I'm not 100% sure, because there are poskim. I take that back. I'm not 100% sure because it does seem from some of the poskim that when they talk about, maybe I'll just go into some of the halachas right now, there is a big discussion about a domesticated dog, let's say, right? A domesticated dog, if you have a dog and you want to close your door, are you allowed to close your door on your domesticated dog? And so some of the poskim say, yeah, once it's a domesticated dog, it's totally fine. It's considered trapped because it's going to stay with you. You just, hey, Charlie, whatever it is, and it comes running after you. But there are some poskim who say that you actually have to have intention. When you close your door, your intention has to be that you're doing it in order to keep your door closed, like to prevent like robbers coming in, and your intention does make a difference. So it really presumably revolves around how do you interpret this Mishnah, right? Which touches upon your question. Is it that no, since I'm doing it intrinsically it's allowed, or as the more accurate read is uvash that the Mishnah said halamazadoma, right? What was the lashon of the Mishnah that you're talking about a case where you do so. Lenolas beso lishomro. You're closing a door in order to protect it, which is a more accurate, more critical read. That the Mishnah said you're doing it in order to close it. What do you mean? My animal's stuck inside. So still, your intention does play a difference, play a role, and so and that is the more normative view. The more normative view is that you could put your dog inside. You're allowed to chase your dog inside. Domesticated animal, but the closing the door is only allowed if you would normally close the door. If you keep your door wide open, if you want to have a dog, it'd be highly problematic. Yeah, so intention does play a role, I guess, is the short answer. Okay, Ika de Amri. There's a different version of this discussion. Amr of Nachman bar Yitzchak afanana mitanina. Okay, so after we had the memra where we said you're allowed to keep a bird under the flaps of the garment, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak came along and said, I could also prove this from the Mishnah, because Afa pi shamar rishon halachlo, harishon chayav hasheni pater. Because in the Mishnah it says that even though the first person stood up and went away, the second guy is going to be exempt. So Maila pater mutter, Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, and the Mishnah presumably means pater, and it's fully permissible. And so again, this new version of this discussion doesn't have Rav Nachman asking a question. Rather, Rav Nachman is proving Rav Abba's points from the Mishnah. And he says, it doesn't pater mean pater aval mutter. And the Gemara says, no, pater aval aser. Pater usually means exempt but prohibited. So the Gemara says, Hamitani Seifa, since in the last line of the Mishnah says, Halamaz Adoma, what is this analogous to? Lenoas Beso L'Shomer V'Nitza Shvi Shomer V'Socho, the person who locks his house in order to safeguard the house, and a deer is found to be guarded there, Miklad pater mutter. That is clearly something which is completely mutter. Shma Mina, you see it's mutter. Okay, so two different versions, but basically saying the same thing. Okay, now we have a general rule coming out of this Gemara. Amar Shmuel, Kol Peturi de Shabbos. Whenever it says exempt, whenever it says pater in all the laws of Shabbos, pater aval aser. It means exempt but forbidden. Okay, so it's very confusing. I remember being very confused by this as a kid. I don't know. But basically, pater normally think pater means it's allowed. No, pater means exempt. Mutter means allowed. Okay, so very important to get that terminology right, and especially in the laws of Shabbos, whenever it says pater, what it's saying is that it's not daraisa, so you won't have to bring a korban, and therefore what it's saying is you're pater, you're exempt from bringing a korban, but it's still forbidden. Okay, however, there are three exceptions. Levar mihani tlas de pater umutter. There are three exceptions where exempt means exempt and mutter. Chadaha, one is this case of a person sitting in the doorway of a house in which a door is trapped. Okay, umimai de pater mutter. How do we know that it means exempt and permitted? Again, this is the third time we have this proof. Diktani seifa, because it says the end of the Mishnah. It's like a person who locks their door and a deer is found inside, and that, as we pointed out, everyone knows that is mutter. V'idach. Okay, that's one example. Our case over here. So again, you're allowed to lock your door if there are animals already somewhat trapped. You're allowed to lock your door. And let's just talk that practically. So again, I just want to repeat. So a person has a domesticated animal might be considered similar to a case where your deer is trapped already and tied up. Your domesticated animal might still be like that. But most poskim say, still even then, closing your door has to be with the intention of doing it for closing your door and not to get it trapped. You would not be allowed, so just to explain that further, if you have like a dog, so I believe on Shabbos, this gets a little problematic. On Shabbos, a person has, let's say, a dog, and they want to, let's say have guests who don't like dogs. So you show up at the house, and you don't want to bother the guests. So what do you do? So what do people do? Put it into the room, and they close the room up.
Fine.
Why?
Because it's already trapped in the house.
So you're saying since it's already trapped in the house.
You just have to make sure.
No, but it's only trapped in the house because it has space to move around. Meaning, part of the way the poskim frame it, and I was supposed to have like full fledged halacha. I'll tell you, I still have like too many questions. I don't have like full, so I'm just gonna pose questions, not tell you halacha lemaisa. But the way the poskim frame what you're allowed to do with your dog is you're allowed to domesticate it. You're allowed to bring a domesticated animal into your house with a couple of conditions. One, it's domesticated, so it's not going to run away. B, the house is large enough that's not trapped. And that B is going to come back to this point. C, closing of your door is not done for trapping purposes, it's done for closing doors. So according to B, based on B, right, B alone, so you have this dog, and now it's running around your house. Your house is, I don't know, 3 floors. Now you put it into a room. It's trapped. It's trapped. Right? So presumably, it was only not trapped because it had room to run around the house. So the question is, I did see some poskim. Okay, so I did see some poskim who are makel, just domesticated animals, saying there's no trapping whatsoever applicable, and so according to them, I did not have a chance to fully. I did not. I should not say have a chance. I didn't fully look into it, so I don't know. It's a fair question, right? Kavod Abrios might play a role over here. There might be what to be somachan, but it's not pasha. It's not pasha what to do. Okay.
Also,
ask your local Orthodox rabbi, but not today.
Bringing a dog from the outside, that's in like you're all running around.
Right.
Inside your house.
So the question is your house more? So if your house is also spacious, right, like a yard is spacious, so granted it's smaller, presumably, if it's stuck in your yard already, but putting it from a yard, I mean, it's not that it went to a smaller size, it went to a trapped size. In other words, if it goes from a yard to a house, they're both open areas that it can run around, that should be fine. Where it gets problematic is putting it into the room, right? People do this, all the time. They're putting their dogs in the room. I'm not sure on Shabbos if that can be done. I just don't know. I need to look into it further. Okay, fine. Let's go a little further. So we're still middle of the 3 cases where it's pater and mutter. Idach, another place. Hamefis morpis b'Shabbos. Person who lances a boil. Person has a boil, like a pimple, and they go ahead and they pop it. Im lasos lepeh. If the point is to make an opening for it, chayev. You're going to be chayev. I'll discuss more later what the issue is over here. Why you're going to be chayev. In other words, you want it to breathe, right? You're going to be chayev. However, im lahotzi mimena lach. If the goal is to remove the pus from it, okay, and you don't care if the hole closes up immediately, then pater, you're pater. Mimaydze pater moter. How do we know that pater here means you are exempt and permitted? It's done because it says in the Mishnah, machat shel yad, a hand needle, litol b'asakot. You're allowed to move it on Shabbos in order to take a thorn with it. So the person, basically we're learning over here, you're allowed to use this needle, and the Gemara is understanding you're allowed to use this needle to pop a pimple, okay? Don't try this at home. But the point is you're allowed to use a needle to pop a pimple, and it's telling you the needle's not muksa. By telling you it's not muksa, it's telling you you're allowed to do this action. Right? In other words, you're not allowed to use an item. If an item is only used for an asr purpose, then the item is asr. The fact that you're allowed to use this needle, telling you that implies you're allowed to use it to pop a pimple. You can't do it to pop a pimple to make a hole because that is a isr, maybe even an isr deraisa. But if you're popping it just to get the pus out, you don't care if it blocks up again immediately, then it's pater and mutter.
If there's blood also coming in that pus?
No, if you know there's blood that's going to come out, then it would be asr. Yeah, it's a case where you know that it's whatever. I guess a big enough pimple that presumably in a small enough hole that it's just going to get the pus out, but presumably not blood.
Are you allowed to put a pimple patch on Shabbos on your face?
What is a pimple patch?
Those like little patches that you put on and no, you don't know.
I don't know.
It's my business. And it helps prevent the pimple from getting bigger and it makes it smaller. It comes in my house a lot.
I
I
don't know what's in it. It's like medicine in it?
It's like, kind of like a
Yeah.
something that...
I'm not sure. I have to look into it. I'm not sure.
Probably also to get a pimple on
It comes up a
Shabbos.
lot.
Also, to get a pimple on Shabbos.
Yeah, so just don't get a pimple on Shabbos.
There you go. From Max's ears. Okay, from Max's mouth. Okay. V'idach, another play, the last example. It's a nachash b'Shabbos. Person traps a snake on Shabbos. Imis asik bo shelo yishchen. If a person's involved to do that, so it won't bite him. Pater, you are exempt. Im l'refuah, if the person's catching the snake to use it for a cure, right? Snakes have medicinal purpose, medicinal function. Sometimes chayv, you're going to be chayv. Umayde pater motor. How do you know it's pater motor? It's not. It says in the Mishnah, kofin ka'ara al haner b'shvil shalotechas bekora. The Mishnah says you're allowed, meaning not only is it pater, but you're allowed to invert a bowl over a lamp in order that it doesn't set fire on an overhead beam, or over the feces of a child, or of a scorpion, so it doesn't sting. It's telling you you're allowed to do these things. Not saying if you did it, you're pater. It's saying you're allowed to do these things. It's saying you're allowed to trap a scorpion, and this is the case for trapping a scorpion so that it doesn't bite. Okay, so a very interesting discussion. So we don't have too many scorpions, I don't think, in Baltimore. But bees. What's the halach with bees? So there is a guy we saw, if you remember yesterday, we saw bees. You're not asur midoraisa to trap a bee because people don't trap bees typically for hunting purposes. The question is, are you allowed to trap a bee if it's going to bite you? So the poskim are a little bit conflicted over here because technically, really, a bee it's not a scorpion. A scorpion is like a vicious, dangerous bite. A bee, whatever, painful. We're not talking about someone who is allergic to bees. That would be a different story. But someone, a regular person who it hurts a lot, but it's not poisonous, right? So the poskim are conflicted, and the bottom line is what they say, especially around Sukkot, around the corner, that you're allowed to. There is what to rely upon, since A, it's Rabbanan, and B, it might go ahead and hurt a person, especially if there are kids around, and the kids are really going to be, there's nothing. I remember, Sukkot's time when there are bees in the sukkah, are all running in circles around the sukkah, and everyone's going inside. So bottom line is, there are kids around or adults who don't like bees, that are really, really have troubles with bee. There is what to rely upon to trap a bee in a sukkah for this reason, because the fact that it's disturbing a person. But if possible, better not to. But again, if there's little children there, or people or adults who just simply can't handle it, there is what to rely upon, and making it and treating it more similar to a scorpion, and therefore saying it's mutter. Okay, so those are some of the practical halachos. Fine. Two other halachos just about trapping, which are important to keep in mind. One is, let's see a fly. So this happens sometimes in summertime. Your garbages might be like flies swarming around your garbage, right? And you put your garbage in the thing, and then when you close the top of the garbage, okay, it's trapping. It's tzad, right?
If they got in, they can get out.
Sorry?
If they got in, they can get out.
Okay, maybe they got in when someone held the door open. Right? Or fine. So and even if there's a tiny hole, the question is it still considered trapping? If it's a tiny hole, is that enough? So, but it's a fair point. So the question is how they got in.
Intention would matter in that case, I would think.
No. So intention is only one of a bunch of criteria. Right? So the bottom line is, the poskim say, if you have a bunch of flies in the thing, you should close it not fully. Make sure it doesn't get closed fully, and then give them a little bit of space to escape. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. When you have flies flying around, either keep it open, which probably will attract more flies and bugs and whatever, but or close it partially, and to ensure, give them a little space to come out. What else? Lastly, cage with a bird. Okay, none of you have birds. Okay, fine. Let's go further. Let's just start the. A spider in the house. So if it's a bite, so it would be similar to a bee, maybe a bee. It's saying it's going to bite. So I mean, again, keep in mind, you could easily, you just try to do this all the time. It's lots of fun, but to trap it without trapping it, right? And if you could get it to go, spider is usually much easier. Put a big piece of paper, and then if you run. But the point is that it's on the paper. Then you could bring it inside, but bring it outside. But capturing it. So if you have kids around, so again, a spider is probably more similar to, it's probably even less, maybe like a mosquito. Bottom line is, if you have kids losing their minds, there probably is what to rely upon to say it's like that. Spider bite. I don't know if it's as painful as whatever. I'm not going to weigh in. If it's as painful as a bee bite, probably bee bites are much more painful, right? Depends on the spider. So if you're a spider expert, speak to David. If you're a spider expert and you know what type of spider, then it'd be problematic. Okay, I guess we'll have to stop here. We're going to do a little catch up. I guess days to come. Okay, have a great day.